Glass Onion is the sequel to Knives Out, which is probably one of my favourite movies ever. Not only does it fully deliver on the murder mystery romp you want, Rian Johnson was able to deconstruct the genre and do it in a way that felt really natural. At their core, murder mysteries are quite mechanical, and so one of the great challenges is trying to hide that so it feels natural and ultimately inevitable without having it feel like you're just going through the motions. Knives Out did that in spades, and underneath it all managed to weave in a really contemporary story in a movie that feels quite old school. Knives Out had such an interesting take on the genre that for me, Glass Onion was doomed to fail. Once you've already pulled apart the genre so successfully, how can you pull that off a second time? But somehow Rian Johnson did it. This was an absolute blast. I just loved this movie. So it goes without saying, the less you know, the better, but the loose setup is Blanc receives an invite to tech billionaire Ed Norton's private island, and shock, something goes wrong. Just like the first film, this has such a fun assortment of characters. Dave Bautista was a real standout for me as the hilarious men's rights influencer. Ed Norton's also fantastic as the oh-so-punchable tech billionaire. But again, it's Daniel Craig who steals the show as Benoit Blanc. It's just such a fun performance that feels so distinct from the other great screen detectives like Sherlock or Poirot, and it looks like he's just having the best time in this role. Wisely, this film goes for a completely different setting than the original, swapping out the old house for sunny Greece. And it's a smart switch up, as the old house from Knives Out felt like old money. It felt grand and classy, while this island pad feels more new money and excessive and tacky. In that sense, this is certainly a much bigger, flashier film than the first, but that doesn't mean it's compromised where it counts. Rather than feel like a case of the week, there's an interesting arc to this film. I just loved how Blanc got tangled up into this case and how it really showed the limits of what he can do. A lot of the murder mystery genre has the trope of someone not being who they say they are. The butler isn't actually the butler, that kind of thing. But in these films, Rian Johnson does such a good job of revealing the truth behind the person they present themselves to be and who they even think they are. Of course, this is a film that has red herrings, twists and turns. One of them, if handled by a less competent director, could have felt quite silly, but I feel like it manages to do something really interesting with it. This film is also hilarious. It just has such a range of gags and is honestly funnier than most comedies. I was laughing the whole way through this. In all the ways it's distinct from Knives Out, in a lot of respects it feels like a very natural continuation. It manages to deal with somewhat similar themes, but from a slightly different angle, and it makes the two films feel quite cohesive. For example, in both films, all the main characters know each other before the start of the movie, which means it can really examine all their interpersonal relationships and what binds each of those groups together. There's a third movie planned, and if they pull that one off, I think this trilogy could really amount to something special. Not just because they're entertaining, but I think these two films have done such a good job at reflecting the period we're living through. At the end of the day, this movie is just so fun. It's pure entertainment. It delivers in mystery, in comedy, in performance, and has something interesting to say about the world. I came out of the screening of this just absolutely beaming. If I was forced to choose, I think I'd slightly prefer Knives Out, just for the old house setting and how much I love Michael Shannon, but honestly, I'd say it's on par. If you have the chance to see this in a cinema, you need to, because it's one of the best times I've had at the movies this year. I'd give it a decent 9.